out to another special episode of It's All Been Talked For. This time, Enemy Mine. Yeah, it's very similar to an episode of TNG this season. One we kept confusing with The Defector. This was the other Romulan episode that we didn't like as much. But the movie, you check it out. We're going to talk about it here. Speaking of checking out, this is something you're going to like, and you won't have to defect. This weekend, the 6th anniversary, on the 31st, the 6th anniversary, It's All Been Done Radio Hour show live at Red Herring Theater. Drinks are available. It makes the show better. It makes everything better. Yeah, get those tickets now. It's All Been Done Radio Hour 6th anniversary show at Red Herring. And now, go with us to the 80s and Enemy Mine on It's All Been Trucked Before.
Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Trucked Before, a special episode during our break. Your regular hosts are here.
This is Steven.
The special Keith.
Jimmy-Jerome. We all just crashed
like
in on an alien planet together. Will we talk our way through this episode or kill each other in the process?
We're going to have to cooperate.
Which one of us is pregnant?
All of us.
I mean, potentially, yes. It's
So, first impressions of the 1985 film Enemy Mine.
I'll give you my first impression from 1985. I thought it was a pretty good sci-fi movie then, and I thought that I really liked Quaid and Gossett before going in, and I liked them a lot afterwards. My 2020 first impression was, it's uneven, but there's still some good spots. And I still really like Dennis Quaid and Louis Gossett Jr.
That is fair, I would say.
Yeah.
I would give you Mary Ann's first impression because she decided that she did not want to watch it. And she said this because she saw it in the theater when it came out and was, I guess, irritated would be the best way of summing it up. She said that basically the things that I was writing on Facebook about it when I first going through the first part of it, it was just Quaid was just so much. The energy was just go all the time, just over the top. And she said just all the screaming, and she's just like, I hated that. For me, it was, as I said, it was a bit much at the beginning, and it took until they got to that hour mark where he really just started just settling down, being a normal person, interacting with the. I mean, there have been some buildups, but the point is, really good performances after that. There was I think a useful message. I don't know if it still holds true right now. I mean, obviously we want those things, but it still is useful. Who knows? The makeup is just unbelievable. I can't believe how well that held up. I mean, the alien costume, that was amazing.
Yeah, I'll agree with you on the message and on the alien makeup. I think Dennis Quaid was terrible in this film.
Well,
I really do. I thought Louis Gossett Jr. was pretty good in it, though.
Yeah.
So, mixed bag. I did actually get into it as it went on. I thought it started kind of rough, and then I started to get into it after a bit and was taken in by the story. And then when Dennis Quaid's character, we'll go back and talk from the beginning, but when David was shot in the head and was rescued on the spaceship, that just lost. From there out, I thought the rest of the movie was utter crap.
Really?
So, I kind of wish they just kept a quiet ending instead of forcing some big action ending on it. But
was he shot in the head? I thought it was just the chest.
Oh, you're right. Chest. It looked like he got shot in the heart. Yeah, I'm sorry. I watched something else earlier today where somebody got shot in the head and lived. So similar complaint there. But
okay, I'm not going to say you're wrong. I was just I feel like I felt obligated for the average of it to be as generous as possible there, but I can certainly see you saying that he was awful in it.
I did not remember him being that much extra at the beginning. The movie gets better late. Like you guys said, it gets better once he calms down a little. I mean, and he always, I shouldn't say always, but he often played that rednecky, for lack of a better term, kind of guy, gung-ho-y kind of guy. I think he played it better in other movies, obviously. Breaking Away was his big first movie, which is one of my favorite movies of all time.
His breakaway performance.
He's kind of the hood or whatever term you want to use. He's a guy from Bloomington, Indiana, who's not going to IU. I agree with you guys. It takes a while till we get to go back to Mary Ann's thing, where the yelling stops, which part of when I was doing my research afterwards last night, I guess one of the big reasons I shouldn't say one of the big reasons, but one of the reasons it failed at the box office was people were turned off by the movie poster, which is just those two right in each other's faces. And,
can we read the quote from the movie poster? I feel like it needs to be entered into the record.
Yes.
Enemies because they were taught to be, allies because they had to be,
Right.
brothers because they dared to be.
Oh man.
That's some real bad writing there.
I kind of love it. I don't know why. If there's something.
I hate it. I hate it so much.
It's a super 80s poster, and I did write, this is definitely a movie of its time, for good and bad. It's a movie of its time, that's for sure.
This was a West German American production, and as Steven said, it failed in the U.S. However, it did have big success in the Soviet Union, where it was the first Western sci-fi film shown in theaters and gained a cult following.
You know, they needed to show the planetscape, maybe a couple of those monsters or something like that. Maybe them off to the side, something. A ship. I think that would have worked. I
don't know.
Well, see, I think that poster. That's why I probably never remembered anything else about the movie other than those few little scenes. I was actually pleasantly surprised at the beginning that there was some other context being added.
It's also a terrible title.
Yeah.
I mean, where was the mine? Is that when they were inside?
See, I don't know if that
is my enemy, right?
Yes, it might be like one of those Star Trek titles, like Enemy of Mine. So it's like enemy, like old English enemy mine, or it could have actually been a play on words because of the slaver colony where they were mining something.
I thought maybe that's good. I thought maybe it harkened to the way Quaid talked to the Drac the first 45 minutes of it. Enemy, mine. Enemy, mine.
Oh my God.
I wanted said that I am not a Quaid hater. I like him in lots of things.
Right.
According to IMDb, he's best known for Far From Heaven, The Day After Tomorrow, Frequency, Inner Space. I've seen 3 of those 4. Yeah, I don't dislike Quaid. I just disliked him in this film. And it felt like he hadn't learned how to act yet. And other things I've seen him in, he figured it out.
I like Quaid in Breaking Away, like I said, was for this. And there's a movie called The Night the Lights Went Out in Georgia with Mark Hamill of Star Wars fame, which is another movie where he's good and he's this redneck guy, but he plays that over the top thing and the understated. But yeah, I think he definitely became a better actor later, but he's good in those movies. But I don't know what made him think that was the way to go.
Wilder Napalm. That's what I was thinking.
Oh yeah.
I really enjoyed that. I don't know. I'm used to thinking of him as being the older version of himself, I guess. I think that's what was jarring about seeing him here like this. I was like, what is going on?
He did look very young.
He was in the right stuff also. He's good in that.
By contrast, though, I thought Louis Gossett Jr. was really good in this movie.
Yeah.
He's best known for this, surprisingly, according to IMDb, as well as An Officer and a Gentleman, Jaws 3D, and Roots. Well, but he's done lots of things. He was in most recently, he's got a lot of recent credits, but what I remember him most recently is he did the series Watchmen on HBO and was really good in it as the Hooded Justice.
Oh, wow. He won an Oscar for An Officer and a Gentleman. He's in a movie called The Skin Game, which was a Western in the early 70s. I can't remember if that was a TV movie or not, but he was great in that. Yeah, he did a lot of great stuff. And also, Keith, I started watching Solar Opposites.
Yes.
And I can't remember if this is their high school or the community college. It's Louis Gossett Jr., either high school or community college.
Oh, it's named that. I didn't catch that before.
It's named that, yeah. We quoted Louis Gossett Jr. from Officer and Gentleman quite often because he's the drill instructor and he's just saying crude things all the time. So it's just like, yep, we have free reign to say this, right? We're just quoting a movie. Just quoting a movie over here. So
in this, I thought he developed a good character arc. His character was different later in the movie. He also developed good mannerisms and presence as the alien. And I feel like it's, there's plenty of actors that have shown us how to do an alien and to do it right. But I think the ones that do it wrong are also memorable. And thankfully this falls into the side of get it right instead of wrong.
This is, I thought this was remarkable. Again, the word there, just the way the costume worked, the choices he was making and how he's representing certain things, the language they came up with, the guttural sound that's hard to do. Yeah. I think, like the gargling thing, that they keep drinking milk or something to make that work. But it just, my problem started maybe when he started speaking English and it kind of fell into that kind of general, like African or Middle East kind of accent that we're used to thinking of as being foreign otherness. Yeah. And I'm sure this is part of the writing, but how quickly that all seemed to come together well, I don't know how much time passed before we picked it up. Is it alien intelligence? What exactly? But
my note at that part was, of course, the alien learned English and the human. But then in like subsequent scenes, though, we saw the human learn his language as well. But they defaulted to English, I guess, to make it easier for moviegoers, and because we're very centric to ourselves.
All I could think of was how many hours every day Louis Gossett Jr. had to spend in makeup.
Yeah,
because we've seen lizard creatures going in the arena and stuff like that, but like I said, it was really good. And then I thought, oh, Dennis Quaid just put on a wig and maybe a beard. But he was, this is pointing out the problem with Hollywood still. Dennis Quaid just has to show up. He was the bigger star, even though Louis Gossett, by the way, Louis Gossett Jr. still ahead of Dennis Quaid on Academy Awards. 1-0. I looked up best makeup. The winner for this year was Mask. With Aaron Stoltz. The other nominees were The Color Purple and a movie I haven't seen, but I think this is also a science fiction movie. Remo Williams, The Adventure Begins.
I don't remember if I saw that before or
Fred
not.
Ward, yeah.
So was this even nominated? I mean, this was like some of the best. That makes no sense. I mean, it's just
it doesn't.
This was so underrated as far as I think that performance alone. Yeah. I mean, they had the headpieces, like the under the skull or the exoskeleton kind of pulsing, the parts around the mouth. It just, I don't know how they were doing that.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, Keith.
It felt like they were aliens, not people in alien costumes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, when we saw the full body, it did look like a rubber suit, but once the acting started and you got into it, it looked very well developed.
And I think, just to go back to Quaid's acting one more time, Dennis, big fan. I think part of it was, let's make him even more loud and rednecky than usual. So that way his journey when he turns around will be a bigger thing. And it reminds me of the scene in the White Savior short that Seth Meyers does, where he's like, and for some reason, the black person in the movie really needs the respect of the most racist white person in the movie.
Yep, there we are.
There's elements of that here. Obviously, it's like, oh, he's not the worst person in the galaxy. Thank God, and I that's selling it short, the arc, I think. But I think that kind of explains just how crazy those early scenes.
I mean, Quaid tried to kill him, but all he did was then take him captive. So already you see the difference.
Right.
Let's jump back to the beginning of the movie here in notes. So we start out with a prologue introduction piece that's really strange, where they talk about non-human aliens because, as opposed to the human aliens that populate the galaxy. Which that right away, and though I think we weren't 30 seconds in the movie and they said non-human aliens, I'm like, okay.
I didn't catch it.
Is this going to be really bad? Because it seems like it's going to be really bad. Then they're going into battle, and there's like a door shutting on people that are trying to get to their planes. And I'm like, why are they shutting them off from their planes? They're trying to, it didn't make any sense to me.
Yeah. And the planes and the sets look like they came out of Buck Rogers in the 25th century or whatever. It's just like some cheap. Other sci-fi shows using these.
Yeah.
I did write down, it felt like a Sci-Fi Channel movie before there was a Sci-Fi Channel.
Yeah. It's almost all men flying the ships. At first I thought it was all men, and then I did see that one woman was included.
Yeah.
But the sexist talk in that opening too, and Dennis Quaid's in the cockpit with Joey, and they're talking about that woman that he's going to go on a date with. And I wrote down multiple quotes where he's like, she's going to give in this time. And
oh man, I missed that.
A white balloon.
The white balloon is what I cut.
Pounds. Yeah.
Again, it was starting really bad.
If you want to, backtrack just a bit. One of the ways he introduced how alien this other species was pointing out they don't even have, they're not no male or female. They're all the same,
Which
the idea
I reject immediately. We know gender is binary throughout the universe.
Hey, I've got respect for a 1980s sci-fi movie that decided not to make gender binary and to pursue that type of character.
There is that. I'm just saying it's the language was very coded. The way to the time period, the way he said it, like the general 80s style acting too. I think was
very Top Gun. A year before Top Gun came out.
Yeah,
Top Gun in space for at least the first 10 minutes.
Tom Cruise saw this movie and was influenced by it.
the goose of the ship, played by Lance Kerwin, who I recognize immediately because he was in everything in the 70s, and he was in The Big Show of the time. It was supposed to be a big show. James at 15, which was very controversial, discussed a lot of mature themes for teenagers, and then ended up only lasting a season and a half. But I recognized him right away, and then I forgot that he gets killed within 10 minutes or whatever. But yeah, guys, if they don't call her a white balloon or whatever, then they don't get to have that great death scene where he says.
The crash was Quaid's fault, pure and simple.
Yeah.
Like, he did not need to chase him in the atmosphere.
No.
He already shot him.
Yeah.
There was no point of that.
Again, just like Maverick.
Yeah.
Well, this goes back to what we were saying before about how over the top they were making him for the journey, and it just you saw just all that gnashing of teeth of like all the pilots and all the humans in that opening bit. They're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna kill. Oh, we killed him. And just that whole kind of have to get him. So just oh god.
Yeah. And they talked about how they were completely inhuman and scaly reptilian bodies, blah blah blah. For as bad as that crash was, Quaid's ship had a pretty smooth landing. It kind of came in nice and level. So, I mean, that didn't really, unless the ship has some kind of auto crash landing thing, I don't know how that really worked.
I don't understand why his co-pilot got killed so fast, and nothing happened to him. Nothing happened to Quaid. Like
he's just that good.
Then we get into this hunter-prey sequence where Quaid's hunting the alien, and he pulls a gun out of nowhere, which I'm like, why did he even have a gun on him? And then he pulls a big knife out of a pocket that's not at all protecting you from cutting yourself out of nowhere.
I thought the gun, and this is just my sci-fi bias showing, I was like, it looks like he just went down to a pawn shop and got a snub-nosed 45 or whatever the hell. And then
why was he carrying the gun in his pocket? Because he had to run away from that ship without grabbing any supplies or anything.
Right.
Did he?
Yeah. When the ship crash landed, he grabbed Joey and pulled him out of the ship very quickly, and then the ship blew up. So he didn't get any supplies out of there, and yet he still had a gun and this big knife with no protective case over the blade in his pockets.
They were deep pockets. Very deep pockets.
I guess, but it just didn't make any sense to me why he had those things. He's a spaceship pilot. Why would you have that gun in your pocket?
That's a fair question.
Yep.
Then we see Louis Gossett Jr. doing his skinny dipping.
Yeah.
At first, I thought he would be naked the whole thing, and it took a couple scenes before he put clothes on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was almost under the impression they were making them so alien that they didn't even need clothing or something, and so I was like, all right, well, it seems like a bit much, but
the setting fire onto the lake and Dennis Quaid laughing.
Yes,
I wanted to kill Dennis Quaid at that moment. The alien's far less murderous. And then I wrote, "It has clothes?" ? Quaid's awful, calling him fat. Like, even after they got made peace, he's calling the alien fat and being mean to him.
Yeah, this goes back to what I mentioned earlier. He says, "You understand any English, toad face?" There's so much wrong with that one sentence. Apparently in this future, in 2092, English is established as the galactic language, which I know will probably happen, but still, do we have to?
Yep.
I don't know. Firefly mixed English and Mandarin, and you had to know both.
That makes more sense. And if English is so great, toad face is the best you can come up with. Come on.
Yeah. So I wrote almost no notes for this long stretch of the middle of the movie where they were living together and getting along, because I was like, oh, I'm into it. I don't really have much to say about it.
Yeah, and I forgot about for a while, I forgot about the baby and the baby and the whole ending, because I was like, is it just the two of them hanging out? Is this the enemy? And then I was like, oh yeah, this happened. Real quick, there's I just say the effects for the movie, I just thought they were not counting the makeup.
Right.
Like I said, the space effects, I'm like, this is like Buck Rogers, an episode of Buck Rogers 25th Century, which still wasn't as good as original Trek to me. And then, but I thought the sets and the mats look good. I'm a big matte painting fan. On the planet, I thought those looked pretty cool.
The animal creatures were not well done.
No.
I've seen a lot worse for the time.
Yeah.
I mean,
sure, but for a big budget film.
I don't think they really could have done much better than, honestly. I mean,
this planet has Sarlacc, obviously, just like Tatooine and Star Trek and Star Wars.
Well, just for reference for the audience, in case you don't feel like looking up, this is like 1985, so there was like nothing people have done to demonstrate that they could have done much better than that.
I thought,
Other than Star Wars and Star Trek.
Keith, I don't know.
I think Wrath of Khan did a better job with its SETI Alpha eel.
I thought the big creatures that they used as armor looked like a bigger version of those guys.
Yeah, I did too.
Yeah,
very similar.
Keith, I don't know if you noticed, but there were some insane stingers in this movie. Like, I thought the music was so over the top at times, but it was by Maurice Jarre, who's an Oscar winner and has done a lot of great movies like Lawrence of Arabia and everything. But I thought it felt incongruous to this. But I guess, again, that might be my bias in the sense of it's a science fiction movie, so I need sciencey music. But just some of it was just really dramatic. How come there were no search parties for either one of these guys?
I wondered that myself.
His buddies know where he crashed, right?
Did they?
I mean, clearly because they find him eventually, which we'll talk about when we get to it.
Yeah. Maybe they weren't his buddies.
But actually, to go back, and this relates to what Stephen was mentioning near the beginning too, just this portrait of Americanness and so on that they're doing for this guy. All the pilots I saw, I think throughout the entire thing were white, essentially. All the soldiers, all the slavers, except for like maybe one henchman.
There was
one.
Black.
The black people had to play the aliens.
There was one pilot at the beginning, Emily Woods, a black woman. I had to do a deep dive just to find her name because she wasn't listed. She was listed in the credits, but there wasn't an IMDb picture or anything. But there is a Facebook page devoted to her. So,
what?
To Emily Woods. And they have a picture of this, and they're like, "Is that you?" And I did find her in the listing, but yeah, you're right. Then that's it. Another
sign of the times. This is perhaps the intended audience. This is who needs to learn this lesson.
Right.
And I think that's one of the bigger.
It worked so well.
Bigger contrasts when you jump forward to Star Trek Next Generation. You actually have a black man playing the role that the audience is supposed to be relating to, and the roles are somewhat reversed in a way. I mean, it's Geordi's the one who's a little bit more peaceful about what's going on. I wouldn't have remembered that unless I hadn't just watched it today again.
About the Star Trek: The Next Generation episode, "The Enemy," which is why we're watching this movie now, because the parallels were clear.
Right. Another fun little sign of the times thing that they were doing, kind of again maybe overplaying their hand, was right before they really started getting along, and this is when Dennis Quaid's character was asking him if he spoke English. Eventually, when he came back to he did that kind of like making fun of some of their foreign accent, kind of like speak English or something like that. That was just,
On that episode, I mentioned The Defiant Ones, a movie from 1958 with Sidney Poitier and Tony Curtis. They're two convicts that escape and they're handcuffed to each other. And so I went and looked it up, and part of their poster was, despite their mutual hatred, they learned to work together. And I'd seen that, like I said, I saw that movie in the 70s, so it's been almost 50 years.
Wow.
And I went back and looked. It won 2 Academy Awards, got nominated for like 7 or 8. I think both actors got nominated. And then I read that, in the references section, Wikipedia, Enemy Mine was heavily related to that. They counted it as a reference or an homage. So their poster had that same thing, like Jimmy mentioned earlier. And then, so the Enemy does connect back, to the Defiant Ones. I mean, there is a connection, which it's well-worn territory. It makes sense to revisit it, but yeah,
So there's on the Wikipedia page, as you mentioned, there's a "See Also" at the bottom, and it mentions the Star Trek Next Gen episode, "The Enemy." It also mentions Darmok coming up in a couple seasons, which is about learning to speak an alien language with an alien so in that way, there's some similarity there. It also mentions an episode of Star Trek Enterprise called Dawn that apparently has a very similar plot, that one of the Star Trek Enterprise crew will get captured or marooned on a planet with an enemy combatant as well. So Star Trek did it twice, unfortunately. And then for some reason, it inexplicably says under "See Also," list of films featuring space stations.
Well, you got to be thorough.
Not sure why that's necessary to see also for this movie. So when Dennis Quaid goes and finds the slavers the first time, that's part of the movie where I found the most unbelievable thing in the film is that Pepsi survived instead of Coke.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's just slavers that drink Pepsi and reputable people drink Coke. I don't know.
Well, it is supposed to be a dystopian future.
So that
there we go. You beat me to it, Keith. I was going to say I don't want to live in a galaxy where Pepsi remains and Coke.
I mean, clearly in the 80s, because Back to the Future as well, Pepsi is paying a lot of money to get itself into sci-fi movies in the hope that people will keep it around, but it lost the Cola Wars. We need to move past it.
I think back then it probably would have been believably a contender still, though. I mean,
the 80s were still the Cola Wars, weren't they?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
My next note gets to the birth already.
Yeah.
Like I said, I didn't take anything. Their stomachs just open.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a much easier way to give birth, I think.
Yeah.
Well, not if you want to live, I guess.
Right.
Well, it didn't sound like they usually die. It sounded like there was something wrong.
Oh, he does say that, yeah. Because I thought the same thing you thought at first, Keith. I was like, are they like bumblebees? You know, when bumblebees sting or whatever, then they're done. I was like, oh, they have one baby and then they're done. It's like, maybe that's not the best way to keep things going.
No, that would lead to a die-off of the species because some of them would inevitably die without reproducing.
Right.
Through accident or illness or whatever. So each generation, they would get smaller.
My problem with the birth is Quaid says, and I don't, what's Quaid's character's name? You know, I'll just keep calling him Quaid.
So Davaj,
Quaid.
Even though it's entered into the Drac annals, he goes.
He didn't. It had nothing to do with annal.
He goes. What do I do? It's like this wasn't discussed. You guys have nothing else to do. This never came up.
Yes, I thought the same thing.
Come on.
Wait, so how much time passed between him learning that he was pregnant and the birth?
So with the rescue, they were only there for 3 years, which it felt like much more.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how it broke down. They weren't clear how it broke down in the individual, but the boy had to grow up within those 3 years as well.
Yeah.
So I would imagine they can't be more than halfway through the time at the birth.
To be fair, I've been here 52 years, and I don't think I'd know what to do.
That baby aged fast.
That's why I don't hang around women that are very close to giving birth.
Oh God, I didn't know where this was going, where that statement was going, and I'm still not sure if we got to a good place. But
what I wanted to know was, what did the baby eat? Because even if they weren't breastfeeding, you can't just give a baby anything. And Dennis Quaid's like forcing it to chew. That baby would have died.
Literally, Dennis Quaid hadn't been around a child for his entire life either. Because I did.
The baby, though, I did want to mention, was played as a young boy by Bumper Robinson.
Yeah,
who's best known for this movie, but then also the animated Justice League Doom voicing Cyborg. Yeah. And he did voices in Ben 10 and Brother Bear and some Marvel's Future Avengers Assemble. But he does have a Trek credit as well, 2 of them actually, one for a video game. And then he will play a Jem'Hadar teenager in an episode of Deep Space Nine. So another alien child.
He was on an episode of the credit that jumped out to me was he was on an episode of Son of the Beach, the beach parody show Howard Stern put together.
So he was also in an episode of Saved by the Bell, the new class. I saw that right underneath his DS9 credit.
Do you think he did his own stunts? That scene
I can't imagine they'd let a kid do his own
with
stuff.
Do you saw that scene I'm talking about with the slavers where they're kind of throwing him around? Yeah. There was something that looked really, really dangerous in that one bit where they're kind of tossing him, and it looked like a real person they were shoving around. So
those slavers, what ridiculous one-note villains! They were just awful.
Yeah.
Unlike real life slavers, who are much more complex and compassionate.
I'm not saying that real life slavers are compassionate, but real life slavers are people, and people are complex, and these were one note characters.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that slavers have good complexity to them. I'm just saying they have complexity to them.
Well, I mean, to be fair, and I'm not sure where the fairness is going to benefit anyone here, where I'm going with it.
I'm pro slavers. No, I'm not, but Dennis Quaid is.
No, right. So within the context of the movie, we only see them in a pretty limited context or some situations. And this is, I think, pretty much all they're going to do or say in the context of dealing with other slaves or being attacked or getting vengeance. Where we see them like going home to their families and trying to pay the bills or anything. This is just them at work. So,
but they just came across as cartoons.
Yeah.
Like extra evil. I don't know. This is where the movie completely went off the rails for me, because after 3 years of being stranded on this planet, his people just happened to find him before he bled out after getting shot almost in the heart. And then they thought he was dead, but he wasn't. Because, their technology could not have checked for a heartbeat or something.
All right, there. So that's. I felt like I looked away for a couple of seconds and just.
And
I had a lot of questions.
The slavers didn't see them get rescued.
Right.
Did they show him physically being rescued by them? What happened exactly?
But he was right there by the slaver ship.
So, so they just jumped to him being on the conveyor belt?
Yes.
Yeah.
Huh.
Did the slavers come and go? I guess
doesn't seem like it.
To enemy mine.
It doesn't seem like it. It seems like they should have seen him get rescued,
right.
And the rescue ship should have seen them. But again, being able to be rescued in that one little brief window of time you would need to be to survive, just ridiculous.
Well, I'm sorry. The bleeding made his life sign show up from orbit suddenly.
And then they said he'd only been gone 3 years, and I'm like, that was like 15 years.
They weren't Earth years.
3 years.
It could have been like the theory of relativity, in the different time passing differently. I'm sorry, Stephen.
But 15 years on the planet.
Keep interrupting, Stephen. What were you going to say?
I'm going on to. Well, I am still in this thing, but yeah, the crematorium scene I thought was actually kind of funny, and it was the most interesting. Like, here's some real people in this future world kind of thing. They're just like, all right, next, shoot them into space or whatever.
I loved that part.
Yeah,
especially with
that. I wanted that to go longer, and then just the whole opening it up is like, shouldn't have been a bigger deal that this guy that everyone was like, he's our ace. Shouldn't there have been like a shoot him into space like Spock at the end of Star Trek II Wrath of Khan kind of thing, not just to dump him into space kind of thing. But anyway, I did like that scene.
I don't know how they got so many dead bodies that they have to put them on the conveyor belt and do the wreath ejector.
I love that too. Just it was the efficiency of it. I think that's the whole point. Is the if you had the bureaucracy, you have a couple of people in that kind of job. It's just like, all right, let's just churn them out. Play the music. Agnostic. Nope.
If you had a space station with millions of people, that might be believable. You did not. There's no reason that ship had so many dead bodies on it.
You must have missed the sign. There was a sign in the background that said 3 hours since our last on-the-job death. So it's very dangerous on that ship.
No, I mean,
they only do the dump once a month.
Yeah.
No, see, that implied that was one of the larger purposes of that ship to begin with. Then, I mean, maybe they were scouring planets for dead bodies and happened to come across them.
So they just scour planets and pick up all the dead bodies they could find, just so they could eject them into space with wreaths.
Yep. It's
oh, look, here's a cemetery. We get 600 more bodies to eject this month. They
did have a lot of wreaths ready to go.
Yeah, I mean, it's like it seemed to be it would be the result. The logical result of having religion too carefully merged with government at that point. There's just a kind of a.
I'm trying to think at the beginning. Did they say we're at war with these guys, or we just keep having skirmishes with these guys?
They're at war with them.
Okay, so I guess you would have a lot of Rees on board.
They were battling over resources within certain areas of the galaxy. They were saying.
I thought you were going to say resources.
From what we saw, maybe if they had ground troops and they were picking up ground troops, this might make sense. But from what it seemed like they were like little fighter jets in space, and those blow up. They don't have bodies you bring back and put on a conveyor belt. Right. Unless they just came across a spaceship that had a carbon monoxide leak and everybody had died.
Well, some of those bags just had arms that they retrieved from after the ships got blown up.
It was I concede it was a funny scene. I don't think it made any sense in the context of the world they created that they had that scene.
Perhaps.
Right. That's the world I want to see. That's my alternate world, is what is going on that this is happening. Because again, to me, that, and not to badmouth 80s, because there's a lot of good 80s sci-fi, but to me that's more that 70s sci-fi vibe that I love so much of a future world that's really not going to be great, but still kind of again, I go back to that Star Wars ethos this is futuristic stuff, but they've let it all go to crap. So these guys can travel to another galaxy and fight with the Drax, and they can get in these super awesome space things. But really, most of their mechanisms and their politics and their everything suck. They're not the race hasn't gotten better, the species hasn't gotten better, and neither has their equipment other than they can travel through space.
My alternate episode, while you're talking about alternate episodes, based on the character, instead of Dennis Quaid, it's Randy Quaid.
Now you got something. Now that's fun. That could be fun.
Now you got a movie. Part of me wants to go back and scour just to try to explain these things and make it make sense. But on the other hand, it is most likely something that's kind of made it to the cut because it was a good idea and was funny. Somebody's like, hey, what if the world was like this? And what if, these things? And I want a vehicle just so I can make this joke and put this here. And it just didn't really tie in as well as it needed to or could have.
Yeah, so there's the novella that this is based on was a Nebula and Hugo winner. And then it got novelized, which answers my question, kind of. What's the difference between a novella and a novel? With help from our old friend David Gerald from Trouble with the Tribbles and among other things. So he helped him with that. So I don't think I'm going to seek this novella out. And I think the novella was called Enemy Mine. So we can blame the guy whose name I didn't even go so far as to get that wrote this. Yeah.
I mean, it's possible that there was something in the original book that this came from that would have made more sense had it, they've stayed more close to the original source.
I think they pulled elements, but and then shoved this other thing on top of it. So,
I guess without realizing it, what I got was like a Starship Troopers vibe from what they were doing with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Some more propaganda essentially with the wreaths and.
Mm-hmm.
So Dennis Quaid goes back to rescue the boy, or not the boy because non-gender, the child.
Yes.
Whose name was Grogu. And when he goes back to rescue the child,
spoiler warning
with Gina Carino, he does not bring any weapons with him at all.
Right.
Knowing he has to take on this whole slavery thing.
Oh, huh.
I don't know.
I thought he was just gonna surge and shoot them with his ship or something.
It just
put the fear of God in him. Something.
Yeah, I don't know. He had no plan. He just was going to run in there unarmed and see what he could do. Even though when he had no cause to be armed, he had a gun and a knife on him. But now that he has cause to be armed, he has nothing.
It's possible that he was the cowboy type character, had his own personal weapons on him at all times and lost them on the planet, so they didn't really have any more.
He didn't get restocked after he jumped out of that bag.
He could at least get a wreath to throw around their head. Hold their arms to their bodies.
That would have been great.
So then he finds the kid, and the kid, you think he's dead, or they're dead. And it's so we've got 2 dead fake outs in 20 minutes. We thought Dennis Quaid was dead, and now we think the kid's dead.
The child is a deep, deep, deep sleeper. I mean, my wife, Colleen's a deep sleeper, but this kid, I'm like, is he dead? Did I forget this part? And finally he moves. I'm like, what? I know these guys are slave drivers, but come on, he's that tired.
Well, and the other cages had dead aliens in them. I don't know why they were locking up dead aliens in cages.
Well, I think they probably died while in the cages, probably from being punished or slacking off. They're like, here, go. Oh, you want to rest? Rest it off in this cage. We'll come back for you. Nope.
And I don't know how that helps productivity, killing your workers.
And to be fair, the kid was there when the one guy's brother died, so it might have just been revenge and not productivity there.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
That actually makes sense.
Then Dennis Quaid's friends just happen to find him, and the slavers decide not to murder the humans because we know the aliens are much kinder than humans are. So, but the revolt, I just kept waiting for the revolt, and the revolt took forever to actually happen. And even then, it was not much of a revolt. It was just Dennis Quaid almost personally took out the entire slaver staff, which was a very small staff. They should have revolted long ago. I don't know. It just felt weird and off and nonsensical to me. I felt the beginning and the end of this movie were terrible, and then the middle was good.
I get, maybe I was a little too checked out from what was happening by this point. And this is, I guess, is more realistic that he's just going to go back to their planet with them, take the child, drop him off, make a speech, maybe get a medal or something, and be on his way. But it felt like I wanted a cleaner resolution to the war or something.
Well, I was disappointed that Dennis Quaid just dropped the child off as well. But then they made mention that Dennis Quaid's name was passed down to the next generation, so there was some lasting impact.
Well, yeah, but I mean, what was it going to help everyone else? This should have been something like where you can take this back to your army and start. Look, these people aren't so bad. What are you doing? Something. You're just rescuing the one boy going to the planet and job's done.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you make a great point. I just didn't care about the war. So I didn't notice they didn't address it. They didn't make us care about the war. They just made us care about the individuals.
Yeah.
So, including the one other actor I wanted to mention, one of the girls that the one woman pilot that goes with Dennis Quaid, Carolyn McCormick. Mm-hmm. You may recognize her because she played Minuet on The Next Generation.
What?
Yeah. Yes. Huh. Minuet was in this movie.
I thought she looked like the Virgin Connie Swale from Dragnet, who was played by Alexander Paul. Completely different actors. Oh, one more thing while we're talking Dennis Quaid. I don't know that he lost weight or whatever for it, but, at some point he's the gaunt. He's been there. He's got the beard and he's got his shirt open. He's ripped. And that was definitely a Quaid thing. He was a very Shatner guy early on. Breaking away, he loses. He can't find. He doesn't have wear a shirt half the movie. And then the movie I referenced, Night the Lights Went on Georgia. The guy was in great shape. He probably still is. He looks pretty good for 66 or 67. Good on you for that, Dennis Quaid. So,
I laughed because you made me think breakaway shirt.
Oh,
and breaking away. It seems like there's never a point at which Quaid is below an 8.5 out of 11 on a 10-point scale. It's like Jack Nicholson's Joker playing Han Solo in an Imperial corridor. And those running scenes were like Chewie. So something about the energy reminded me of little kids playing soldier or whatever. There's just always something to. Oh, it's so exciting. We have to scream. We have to run. That kind of energy.
I did write both. Regardless of how we feel about Quaid's performance, both actors commit. He definitely commits to it, whether it's for better or worse. They definitely commit to it. Just the two of them for months at a time, I'm sure. But they definitely committed to it. So, sorry, back to your comments.
Let's see. I put he's intolerably American for the first third of the movie. That goes back to the speak English kind of things and just just the entitlement. I'm hungry. That whole thing. Mm-hmm. I know I just tried to kill you and you tied me up, but give me food now.
Yeah,
I demand it.
Not only was I'm hungry, then when he got it, he's like, "This is terrible. The stuff you guys eat is terrible." All right, then go hungry, jerk.
Yeah.
Keith, I'm thinking Marianne, if she had watched it, would have quite often been saying, "Kiss, kiss, kiss." Yes, because they're so close, face to face, so often.
Especially in the poster. But
can we rule out that Quaid didn't impregnate the alien?
See, I was starting to think.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say I was starting to think about that before they got to the joke, which I appreciated the way they handled that kind of his amusement of the situation. It's like, don't look at me, the whole kind of somebody. Yeah. I love that. But
see, I read that scene as admitting they had slept together. Maybe that's just me.
Huh. And that's awesome. It gets lonely on whatever that planet was.
Yeah.
I feel like they couldn't have gone quite that far in 1985, but
when the snow's coming down and they're trapped in that hut with nothing to do.
Yes. And I didn't understand how close that planet was to a sun and all that stuff that they had. It was desert, but it was snow, but it was, what is it?
Yeah.
What is it? Vegas? I don't know what was going on there.
I guess they have seasons. They've got rainstorms, really loud ones, meteors that look like fireworks.
Yeah. Planets
or sparklers.
Planets that are visible to the naked eye, or very largely visible to the naked eye, which is, I'm sure this happens.
We don't know those were planets. Those could have been Death Stars.
That's no moon. I wrote down all the movies or stories this reminded me of. Robinson Crusoe on Mars, especially once he grows the beard. Gilligan's Island, of course, which we've talked about many times on this podcast. Castaway. I don't know if you guys saw The Lighthouse last year with Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson, but it's essentially two guys that lose their minds working in a lighthouse on this island. And when I think it's Quaid's character says, "We're gone crazy," I'm like, yeah, this is Lighthouse. The one other movie it reminded me of, and this is because Quaid gets to do 2 of these death scenes, is Tropic Thunder, the big death scene in there where Ben Stiller's trying to work up the tears. It reminded me of that in a funny way. So, yeah.
Apparently, they blew their shaving cream budget on creature effects, which are frankly remarkable even by modern standards. Yeah. So obviously, of course, he wouldn't be able to shave, but I still thought it was funny at the time.
Did you guys hear the Houston Oilers reference?
Something about when he was teaching them football. It kind of blew past me. Which
made me laugh because they no longer exist. They are now the Tennessee Titans, and in Houston, you now have the Houston Texans.
Well, they'll be back.
That's how creative they were. They still are with names in Houston. I could see a Dennis Quaid playing for the Houston Oilers, and of course, he had 2 famous roles as a quarterback. Everybody's All-American, which I understand that he's really good in that. That's with Jessica Lange. And then on Any Given Sunday, which he is very good in that, he plays the Asian quarterback, and then Jamie Foxx is the young quarterback who's usurping him. So it's a later Oliver Stone film. Again, I watched it on a plane, but I recommend that if you're
flying,
especially if you're flying.
So this story, the original story, was written by Barry Longyear, and this is his only IMDb credit. The teleplay was written by Edward Kamara. I don't know. He's got a few writing credits. He wrote a couple episodes of the 90s series Merlin. He wrote Dragon, the Bruce Lee story. He wrote the movie Lady Hawk. And I don't even recognize the other 3 things he wrote. So not a huge well-known writer, but he's got a couple of genre credits. And the movie was directed by Wolfgang Peterson, who's best known for directing not only this, but Das Boot, Outbreak, and Air Force One.
I wrote Das Planet because I thought he directed Das Boot.
Very nice. Yeah, I'm surprised this is on his list ahead of Outbreak and Air Force One as what he's best known for.
Yeah, same here. Did you guys recognize the narrator?
No.
I thought it was Dennis Quaid at the beginning.
Yeah, there's a narrator, and then it goes into his talking, which always makes me think, well, he must survive unless he's talking from the great beyond. To me, it's like you're spoiler alerting right off the bat.
I just saw who the narrator was.
Yeah,
that's exciting.
Yeah, it's Tom Baker,
Doctor Who.
Doctor Who. Yeah,
one of my favorite Doctor Who's. Probably my favorite of the old guys.
He's probably my favorite because I'm pretty sure every episode of Doctor Who I did see, he was in.
Yeah. I didn't realize he did a voice in Star Wars Rebels.
Oh, what? Wow, I didn't know either.
Huh. He plays the Bendu in 5 episodes. Anyway,
did you guys see what this was rated? Was it PG 13?
PG-13.
All right, that makes sense because I thought there are some gruesome deaths in this movie.
There are. Yes.
Yeah.
Ranking, I guess. Was this movie better or worse than, I don't know, what are we supposed to rank it against? The Next Gen episode. Let's rank it against the Next Gen episode at The Enemy.
It feels like apples and oranges in a way now that I've seen them close enough together. I can tell that, but and part of it is that The Enemy had to have been inspired by this.
Yeah.
I mean, when you look at the planet's surface, the stormy atmosphere, but really beyond that, the similarities aren't as striking as I would have expected, or as I thought that I would have remembered at the time.
I mean, when the Romulan gives birth and Geordi has to raise the baby, it's kind of similar.
You know what I'm weighing is how much I love Louis Gossett Jr. versus the fact that TNG episode was a good hour shorter than this movie.
Yeah, I'm with Keith, though. I do feel like it's really hard to pit them against one another.
It is.
There were elements of this I liked better. And then there's also my bias that I just like Star Trek.
Right.
But yeah, I feel like...
I'm going to give Wesley a 4, though, on how annoying he was in this movie.
What about Davidge? What does he get?
11 out of 10.
Just based on my limited memory of how things were back then, I feel like this performance was way too underrated as far as Louis Gossett Jr. I mean, it's just what he accomplished in that. It was just.
I'll second that.
Yeah, he's another one who his post-Oscar winning performance should have been, or roles he got should have been a lot more. But I think he's still done better than Cuba Gooding Jr., I think. But since Cuba Gooding Jr.
Well, neither the Wikipedia page or the Memory Alpha page for the episode The Enemy mention Enemy Mine, other than on Wikipedia under C also. It has Enemy Mine as well as Hell in the Pacific, which is a 60s film with a similar plot.
Yeah. I mentioned that actually in the Enemy episode of this podcast also. I mentioned the Lee Marvin movie, but I couldn't remember the title. So there you go. Yeah, Hell in the Pacific. Yeah.
So next week, not next week. Next week we're off. We're still on hiatus, but season 4 is coming soon.
Oh, yeah.
Starting with The Best of Both Worlds Part 2, which as we record this, we haven't seen. We have seen Part 1 a few weeks ago, but we have not seen Part 2 recently. I've seen it many times, but it's been a while. And Steven hasn't seen it at all.
I haven't seen it.
So
I saw it at least once, probably.
How are you feeling right now, a few weeks out, about that cliffhanger?
I went through the thing like, do I remember the end? And I'm like, yeah, of course I do. Yeah. I cannot wait to get back into it. So,
are you anxious that you had to wait a whole month to watch it?
I've kept myself occupied watching Enemy Mine.
Sure.
Minute by minute. No. Actually, I did watch it 1 minute at a time, but strung together all at once. All 109 minutes.
I watched it. I was time traveling. I lived through 109 minutes. I went 109 minutes in the future by the time I got to the end of it.
But it was only 3 years.
Well, until we come back with Best of Both Worlds Part 2, live long,
Toadface, and prosper.
And if one of you gives birth, I will raise your baby until I drop it back off with your people.
Then your work will be done.
Exactly. It's All Been Done presents
Who's Got the Time?